The answer to 1984 is 1776.
Let me tell you who pulls triggers on our troops. British, Israeli, and U.S. contractors. I would have to say from the numbers I've seen in internal sources, more than half of the dead U.S. troops were killed by our own people. You're like, well, that doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense. You got $1 trillion a year going into those two wars, black holes. You got to have an excuse to stay there. Look, they run the same tricks every 2 years. Remember 5 years ago, they said, oh, in 2 years, we'll look at pulling out. Then in 2 years, we're going to pull out. Well, Secretary of Defense Gates announced today that now they won't look at pulling out until 2014. And then in 2014, they'll look at pulling out in 2016. And then in 2016, they'll look at pulling out in 2018. And then in 2018, they'll look at it in 2020. And in 2050-something, folks, they'll look at it in 2052. And then you complain and say, I don't want to be there. And Gates is like, you know how much opium there is here? $500 billion a year. We're never leaving. And by the way, when your kids get caught running this stuff up their veins, we're going to put them in prisons owned by the same private central banks that launder the money. And the average yuppie's going to go, good. I like it. And that's why we failed. You know, last night I was watching television. I was watching History Channel, or the Military Channel. And I couldn't help but feeling all patriotic and pro-war, watching World War II reels. On the Military Channel, they were airing old newsreels about the march in the Pacific and about the island hopping and taking this island and then taking that island. And at an emotional level, I was all proud of America defeating the Japanese. But even by that point in the 1940s, early 1940s, mid-1940s, our country had been taken over by the private central banks that had maneuvered the Japanese to attack us, that had cut off their oil, that had U.S. forces operating as private mercenaries, the Flying Tigers and others, attacking the Japanese all over the Pacific out of China. And it was all just a giant setup. And then we won World War II, so we felt like we're the good guys, we can do no wrong, so we totally trust the government. And the Bill of Rights and Constitution have basically been overturned. And then now here's our government using our country to launch wars in Libya, Afghanistan, Iraq. I mean, our troops are in 160-plus countries, and they're not our troops. It's not our military. Our military is running illegal checkpoints all over the country. Our military is training with foreign troops for gun confiscation. Our military, every chance they get during a natural disaster like Katrina, doesn't bring food and water. They come in and confiscate the guns. And it's all on the news. And I was thinking about this last night because I keep revisiting this periodically, but never really getting into it in any detail. And I need to go back and pull up all the old mainstream news articles and show this progressive rollout. I guess Police State 4, Rise of FEMA actually does it. But I want to do like a short report with it all in it. And I just think about how much it freaks me out to have this article and others from 2 weeks ago. Canada, U.S. agree to use each other's troops in civil emergencies. Now, again, this came out under the SPP. And it came out in the news, again, just a few weeks ago. The copy that I have printed here is actually from February 22nd, 2008. But the issue is, then just last year we heard U.S. troops are up at the Olympics to help look for terrorists. All of this stuff moves incrementally. The globalists take their time isolating us, conditioning us, rolling these programs out. And I just think about the threat fusion centers and the Stasi police rollouts and all the different things that are happening, and the biometrics going in to buy and sell, and the surveillance grid and the TSA rolling out on the streets. I mean, we know that this is an authoritarian, corrupt, evil government that's illegitimate.